Hello, hello everyone. I've got another bizarre dream I'm going to tell you, and so let's get into it. So, this dream is a little bit more on the unrealistic side of, and more on the unrealistic versions of the real world stuff. Like, it's more abstract, but more or less. So, it's about a dream that takes place in random locations yet again. So, I'm going to tell you. So, the first part, I started off in this white room. So the room has white walls. I mean, it's like a rectangular room. There was no windows, and on one part is the hallway that leads to another room. So it's basically two rooms with a hallway that connects both of these rooms. So we've got one room, a hallway, and another room. I think I was alone in that room, and my goal was to kind of get out of that room. So, what I remember in the room is that the walls are just plain white. All of them are white with a few moldy areas or something. It's not wet, it's just mold. Like what you see in really old apartments where the walls are like off white that have like a rough like colored pattern. Like there's like a discoloration in some parts of the walls. Like the walls are kind of dirty-ish, dirty-ish, dirty-ish. And those walls were just windowless, I would say. So what happened was that I was in those joint rooms, the rooms that are joined together, and I noticed that on the second room there was one wall that had aluminum foil walls. Like there was one room in one of the two rooms, and one of the walls in that room, in that room, in that room had aluminum foil. It's made up entirely of aluminum foil, and it's really shiny. But looks like a mirror, but it's more. It's kind of it has a foil texture, so it's not like totally flat aluminum foil. That's a bit more of a crumpled texture. And I guess that aluminum foil part of the wall was my go-to place, was my way out. And so that was pretty my way to go. So I went through that, and I then ended up on another room, which is a bigger white room. And then now my goal was just to find a way out of this, because it is like a sort of an obstacle course that you're trying to get past and that you are in. So those type of rooms, you're in you gotta navigate to these rooms to you gotta it means you gotta navigate, and you gotta it's like you're in an obstacle course that in which you gotta pass through those challenging obstacles. And in this scenario, in this scene, I gotta progress through rooms full of different obstacles. So I guess this first room was to try to find a way to break out of that. And then in the second room, I guess it's another obstacle because I ended up somewhere in a bigger room, and it had this giant rotating wheel that spins like that. Something like that. And then I managed to make it pass through that, and it was such a huge spinning wheel that goes vertically like that, like it's like this and like this, and it spins like that, and it takes up the entire room. It's like a 10-meter ceiling. So I managed to just latch on in one of those sticky, and so I managed to latch on into this giant, one of the arms, I would call, of the giant spinning wheel like that. And I somehow realized that the room had no gravity. The room had no gravity. No gravity. So I could not fall, but I could just latch on and just spin with the wheel like that. And at one point, I spinned as I as this wheel, goes to the ceiling. One of the arms that I was with, I managed to look on the ceiling, like towards the very top part of the ceiling, and to the side, I could see that the ceiling is floating, and the walls are like the walls that go to the ceiling, they do not extend to that ceiling, so you could see through that wall. So one of the so one of the things that happened, okay, so what else as I okay, so as I realized that after going on top with the wheel, as I've seen, as I went close, the closest point to the ceiling, I've noticed that the ceiling was floating. Like the walls were there. There's four walls, but the walls do not extend fully to the ceiling, so you could see what's the gap to the walls. And so I kind of thought to myself, how can I make it to this part? And how can I pass through that? And that's one of the parts that I could only remember. And then there's another part where I remember that I was in a third room. There was a third room that I remember. And this room had a giant spinning cylinder. And the same thing as the second room with the giant spinning wheel. I kinda latched onto the cylinder and there was no gravity. And so I spun with the wheel, with the cylinder, in this third room. And what'd you say? The cylinder had those neon beams that rotate with the cylinder. So we got this whole cylinder that's spinning around like a giant rolling pin, and it has sort of those neon colored white beams that rotate with it, and I gotta avoid that, I guess. So I managed to move past that cylinder and avoid those. And then I ended up outside or something, and it was a rainy outside section. So I guess that's how I could only remember it to this extent. So this is the entire video. Okay, so that is the video itself. If you've enjoyed this way of me speaking softly, please hit that like button. Okay, so this is the end of this video. If you do enjoy this little story, please hit that like button below. And so, have a good day, everyone. See you soon.